The spiritual tool that our people always use, we call it better known as a rattle, but in our language we call it sisiwan. Sisiwan comes from the term of spring, siwan. Again, just to quickly recap there, this word up here, siwan, so it actually comes from the water. That's why you see this word CC, and that's CC. When springtime comes, the ice starts to melt, and it makes this rumbling sound in the water from this ice, and it's letting the earth know to wake up, our Mother Earth to wake up, to come to life. That's when you see new life start to regenerate, the grass, the berries, and so forth. So in this time, this knowledge came from there, and hence we don't need to call to the earth, we need to call to this creation up here. And this is the reason why I'm doing this presentation with the star charts. And again, we use this CC one to call to the spirits up there, because we at one time came from there, we didn't come from the ground. We all have our own spiritual stories, and we were placed in certain symmetric orders, meaning the black people were put on a continent known as Africa. That's where the black people originated from. You know, the white people, Britain, Rome, and all those areas, they had their own island. Same as the Chinese people, they were given their own, and this was the creator. As for indigenous people, as Nehewak, we were put on Turtle Island. We were supposed to keep this separate, to keep that balance. But again, through farce colonization, Britain came over and conquered this world. So this is what we follow today, and this is one of the reasons why we merely only speak English. When the first settlers came across, they said, it was a guy by the name of King George. King George was the king back then. And he said, you will go to these newfound lands that you have discovered, which was North America, Turtle Island. You will go live amongst these people. You will go live amongst them. And there, you will share in equality that we were to share. So the very first treaty was the wampum belt, and this belt only had 2 lines across it, meaning that we would live equally with these newcomers. So the Pope said, if these people on this newfound land, North America, if they do not believe in a God, then they don't own any lands. You will take and proclaim it as yours. And I also proclaim, the Pope said to King James, no other language is to be spoken on this newfound land other than English. If anybody speaks other than the English language, you will annihilate them, meaning to kill them. So this is why so much massacre happened in the early 1700s and whatnot. And a lot of our people were put to death because they resisted that change. And today, this is where the King James Bible comes into play, meaning that is the reason why in residential school we were beat not to speak our language, and we were afraid for our children. That's why that became a stop here. That's the reason why all of us, most of the young people, only speak the English language. So now returning back to that, we now have a doorway to open, to exercise who we are as people. That we didn't come from Adam and Eve, you know, as such told in a biblical sense from the Bible. We had our own creation stories. And now in returning back to the language, our culture, and our ways, at one time potlashes, meaning gatherings were not allowed, ceremonies were not allowed. I remember my grandfather said the last time he heard a drum on my community of Cross Lake, Manitoba was in 1935. And the last guy that sounded this drum went to prison for 10 years for beating that drum. And all these things are documented. This is how we survived that era. And that's the reason why we call it cultural genocide. Genocide is made up of two words. One is an English term versus another term that's used of the Latin term. Geno is an English term meaning a group of people, a distinct nation, such as Saga Cree Nation is a distinct nation. So that's what geno means. Side is a Latin term meaning to cease to exist, to destroy it, to annihilate it, to kill it. When you put these two together, geno and side, you have genocide, eh? And this is what happened to our people. It is this information and the history that you will not learn about in school, because now there's a doorway that what occurred in our history is now we're trying to get it into the schools so that you really push hard forward to try and understand who we are as people. One of the terms that they use, we have many identities, meaning we've been called many things. First of all, we've been called Indians, because the reasoning behind why they call us Indians is because this so-called Christopher Columbus was on his way to India and somehow got lost and ended up in North America. And the very first group that he saw was these brown-skinned people. He says, oh, we must be in India. These are Indians. But he was on his way to East India, and somehow he got lost. The next one that came upon us was this word, indigenous. Indigenous, the peoples of the land. It really doesn't describe us who we are. We've been called First Nation members, band members, Aboriginal. Where this indigenous came from in 1977, when our people went to go talk about human rights at the Geneva Conference, they said, how are we going to represent so many people of distinct nations? So they said, we will go to this conference and talk about our human rights, of how we've been treated. And again, that treatment is still exists today. You see it in newspapers, you see it on Facebook, you know, our people are not being treated with equality. So that's why education is so important, so that we may survive. And you know, I cannot encourage you guys enough to stay in school and to learn about who we are. The next term that they come up with us when the signing of the treaties in the 1800s was they called us Cree. That is not even a vocabulary to our language. Cree is a short form meaning, the long term meaning, Cree-ative. It's a French term meaning screamers. So when you refer yourself to a Cree, you're referring yourself to a screamer. We are yet, it's been 152 years since the signing of this treaty. We have yet to declare to the world who we are. We are Nehewak. That is where we're stuck in it. So when young people don't want to learn about this, they get lost and they want to belong to something else. Because we're only human, we want to belong to somebody. You know, we no longer are proud to have long hair to speak our language. We don't want to speak our language. We want to speak, hey bro, what's up? You know, we speak you know, we don't walk proud, you know, we walk around like this. You know, that's not us. Being proud is being able to understand who we are and how this life was given to us by our Creator. That is why it's important that we go back and try to understand through our stories, through our teachings, so that you may carry this on. These stories that I share with you are not out in schools, they're not in higher education such as colleges. This knowledge that we're transferring to you is so unique and it's so very powerful, and it defines us who we are. Being able to understand why we speak this way, why we do ceremonies, that's where you start to begin to understand who you are. So getting back to what we're talking about, these things are not being taught in school. We like to further enhance these by taking them out onto the land, having a relationship with the land, the environment, being able to understand. They say that there's 144 pharmaceutical medicines on the market today. Out of 144 of those medicines, 128 of those come from the earth, from the land. They're only in pill forms, eh? So they have now taken our knowledge and basically selling our healthcare back to us. So a lot of these things, if we're able to understand them, what happens to this pill? Because our medicines were so spiritual that we've done them through ceremony, that it would take you throughout a whole season. If we gave you the natural medicines, it would last you through a season, meaning from spring till summer, if you took this medicine. So again, when we talk about the Sisigon, our original rattles look like this. And this is one of the designs in the syllabics. How many of you guys ever were taught syllabics? You see the, I think it's the W, eh? Wa, we, with, woo. Okay? So this is one of the designs. And I'm only a carrier to this knowledge. This knowledge actually belongs to each and every one of you. It belongs to your future, your children, your grandchildren, eh? Because one day you're going to be parents. And hopefully that you can understand what I'm talking to you about. In our creation story, this is a star chart. The Roman people were not the only ones that looked up into the sky. Every nation, every walks of life looked into the sky, and they were able to read the sky, because the sky is this where we come from. We call these Atsagosak, Atsagok. And the spirit that we have here, Atsag, so we have a direct connection to the star world, the spirit world, eh? Anyway, this is what we call, wear the star blanket, and I do a lot of the star blanket teachings. We call this Atsagabok, eh? Atsagabok. In the form of the ones that talk about this, they call these the Pleiades, the Pleiades, Tagua Score. And where this star, if you ever look up at the north, how many of you guys ever seen that dipper? The Big Dipper. Well, this dipper was to be here. This constellation of Atsagabok would be right here, right next to it. Eh? They say that our people came from this star world. This is where Nehewa came from, eh? And that they were lowered down by this beam. The very first one came, and they were specifically put on these trees, eh? Which is known as the popular tree. That's why we honor this particular tree. Every walk of life, we're given a tree. And that's why Otote Mituan, this refers, Etega di Ototia Mitoshik, that we were specifically put on this tree of life. So again, we talk about these 7 stars, Atsagoisko, 7 meaning Tepagok. Tepagok does not necessarily mean 7 in the form, meaning that you're able to spiritually cover yourself. So this is where that star blanket, it's a little bit differently designed because we've adopted many other nations' ways. Eh? I don't want to get too much caught up into this Atsagabok. This star chart here is what we call Saga Attack. This star is right above us. If you go out at night, this is what you'll see. And there's a story that revolves around each of these stars. The old ones have told us that this is what we carry. We walk in both worlds, the dark world and the side that gives life. So when we teach our young people through ceremony is to walk in that daylight, to walk in the light that gives life, to be kind, to be respectful, not to hurt one another. Those are the teachings that revolve around there. This talks about the woman here that carries life. This one talks about the man. You're only given 3 things in life that you have owned. That's your mind, your body, and your spirit. And you have to look after it because you only get it once in your life, once in this world, eh? This one talks about that we carry the load on both sides. This one talks about the woman and also the man. This one always points to this starway, the way home. And it's pointing to this star here, eh? This star chart. Saga Attack is pointing to the way home. So we have no concept to this. We don't know how to go home once we leave this world, eh? There's stories that evolve around that. So again, when we talk about Saga Attack, there is 4 stars by its mouth. And they say when we want to say our prayers, that is a good practice to use Nehil Bigiskoy, meaning to use your language when you pray to our Creator. Because a moose does not use a horse's language. You know, it will not be recognized. And that's what the elders are saying. So the foremost is when you pray. That's why we always say respect your elders, because they continue to speak on your behalf because they're so keen with the language, eh? So when you offer them tobacco for prayers, to say prayers for you. And this is why these 4 stars, Nehil Bigiskoy, we talk about that, Nehil with name. And in our language, Saga Attack, we were taught that he was a trickster, he was a conjurer, and this and that. But the language tells us different. The very first Wisage, to love. The Wisagya, that's the very first language that you hear in there. Wisage, to love. And of course, Attack, a loving spirit. This was our teacher at one time. He was the one that was given the task by our Creator to come and name everything and give it everything that had a spirit. So everything that we say in our language, just like Maskoshi, it has a spirit, it grows. You know, the trees, they grow, they move. Otin, the wind moves, but you can't see it. And that's what spirituality is to us. It's not a religion. You know, it's not a religion. Spirituality, it's about believing the unseen world. Because that wind, you feel it, but you can't see it, eh? And believing it that it's there. But the spirit can actually move those trees. You see it moving? It moves the grass. With this, without that wind, that unseen world, a bird cannot take flight. The clouds will not move. There will be no life. So that's what in turn that we use. We breathe it in. That's the things that, it's the air, the wind provides that for us. And it gives us life. That's why we honor it. What you're carrying here is your spirit. We call it Nitachag. Nitachag. So we have a connection to that, eh? Our language always dictates that process. The next time that we hear, these are the reason why we do this, what we call Matutsan. Matutsan is better known as the sweat lodge. I want to share this story with you because it's very important that we understand what it is. I want to share this story with you about this because these 7 stars here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, they change at this time. This is the reason why these 7 stars. These are the exact same stars that we see on this star chart here, just a little bit closer and bigger, right? So this is the reason where this was given from the star world. We just didn't make stuff up. We don't make stuff up. That's why a lot of people will take these things upon themselves and try to mimic them. I carry them without having the knowledge to them, eh? So in our language, we call this Matutsan. Some people refer to it as Waginogan, meaning Gawaginichik, the bending of willows. Eh? But anyway, where this term came from, this sweat lodge, it was by the Jesuit priests. In the archives of the Jesuit priests, there's a documentation of archival information of how they first saw the land and what the people were doing on this land. And I quote this word for word. They said, "As we observe these peoples of the land, we are unaware as to what they are doing. they seem to take these willows here and intertwine them to create a little lodge where they heat these stones up and then they cover this lodge, where they take their sick and their ill in there. And after exiting out of this little lodge, they come out of there perspiring of sweat. We can only assume and call it a sweat lodge. The very first word that you hear here is sweat. What happens when you sweat? You perspire. And so it was these stories, the spiritual stories, that had brought true value to that understanding. The story that was told to me was by my grandfather. His name was Red Cloud is his name. And he shared this story with me. And I'm not saying this is the only story out there. There are many different types of structure, but this is the story that I carry, that was passed on to me about Matut-san. A long time ago, there was a little boy named Saga Attack. Saga Attack is one of the spiritual characters that we speak about in our stories. Saga Attack had a little sister. Her name was Niguan. Niguan is a short word for Kanigopanchik Nitoshat. So we only use Niguan. And it has the reference to those willows, Kanigopanchik, hence the willow trees. So at one point in time, they were so keen with the land that they did not fear their lands anymore. They understood what was on the land and what it provided for them, these two young people. So their parents said, we are going to set off and go in search of these medicines to the east. What I'm saying is, his parents told him that they were going to follow this eastern river to go in search of those winter medicines. That his parents told him that the first fall of snow they would return home. That Saga Attack had to stay home with his sister at the camp. But Saga Attack knew, was not afraid. So again, as Saga Attack's parents set off, went to the east, he walked out one morning and he was going to go make a fire for his sister. So he went to make a fire and he noticed the geese and the ducks were starting to fly south. They started flying south. And he was reminded, because of the change, that winter was going to come soon. And he was reminded what his parents told him, that they were going to return. They were going to come back soon. As the days followed, my grandfather said, Mosum said, one other morning that he had went out again to make a fire, he noticed he noticed the first snowflake descend. Again, he was reminded that his parents were going to be here soon. As the days followed, as the days followed, it continued snowing without his parents showing up. It was then that he left. He decided something must have happened to my parents. And there, he told the sister Niguan to stay with the dog, that I need to go in search of our parents. Something must have happened. I gotta go and search for them. So Goniga Giwe Ituma Uta Agasko Mina Uta Chapia Mina Inegota Tipinigeto Nimawin Kadishipueskat. He gathered what little he could carry, his bow and arrow, and what little food that he can carry, and he set off following this eastern river. Mitune Kimishiwes Kamumine Piponik, Mina Kimishiwes Kam Hesiwanik. Itamina Kiatia Pitawishkam. Is enipennik, etega giuti tiskagas ino, eteo magat na popicheskete etika, katia sinyoapska. So he set off following this eastern river. Musum said he walked throughout all of winter and all of spring and half of the summer, where he came upon the Valley of Stones, somewhere in the east. And one day he met up with these Mistapewak. We call them Mistapewak. And the reason why we call them Mistapewak, Monial called them Sasquatch, Bigfoot. And the reason why they were such giants, Mistapewak, is because they were cannibals. They ate everything. They were able to consume human beings. So Chagapis approached him very cautiously, Mistapewak. And he said, Mistapewak, he said, have you seen my parents? This is the same river they followed. They must have come through here. I've seen no sign of them back there. Have you seen them? And these two Mistapewak looked at each other and said, Mistapewak responded and said, we have not seen anybody. But right away, Chagapis was very weary, and he knew that these Mistapewak were lying to him. So very cautiously, he took an arrow and he had it down here. And they were talking amongst each other, these Mistapewak. Chagapis could be a good meal. So Chagapis shot this one, knocked it down. As the other one charged, he took another arrow and he shot it, knocked it down. And in order for these things not to come back to life, Chagapis knew what he must do to them. In order for them not to come back as Witigo in our language are the ones that come back to life, for they didn't have proper burials. So Witigo, and Witigos were always hungry for life, and they would eat their own flesh. Witigo in our language means to be lent life over. So anyway, Chagapis knew what he must do to these things in order for them not to come to life, that he had to remove all the vital organs that made them live. So as he opened the belly of the first Mistapewak and started taking the guts out of it, the liver, the kidneys, the heart, the lungs, as he was pulling up, he noticed that there was a lock of hair inside the belly of this Mistapewak. And he opened it, and he took this hair out, and he recognized this hair to be of his father's hair. And he was shocked what he had discovered. That he ran over to the next Mistapewak, and same thing, he gutted it. And he opened the belly, and inside that belly, he found a braid that belonged to his mother. So he took these two locks of hair and he put them in birch bark scrolls, and he journeyed back to his sister in Migon. And he was grieving, that he was saddened what he was discovered, that he was going to be parentless. So on his way home, Chagapis, in his dream, the old ones that took him to the star structure, and they told him where life came from. That he must start now to take these and create this lodge. They call this, the very first name to this lodge was Mitosan, hence the word Mitosak. Mitosan, Mitosanige. That he was to make these connections and go and ask for this life, for his parents to be returned. And he was supposed to ask the old ones that came from the sky at one time, these stones that you see in the fields came from up here. And now we utilize them to send our message back through that. There's another story about Ashini. I don't want to get sidetracked because we have so many stories that go, but they'll all fit in together. So again, as he dreamt about this, he was supposed to get a Tagua Score, meaning to create a belly button in this earth for those stones, that life to be there, that fire. Because when we say iskoteo, it doesn't mean fire to us, it means the heart of a woman. Iskote. So again, as he bent these willows, and he was no patagwetotak, there's a term, that an old term, no patagwetotak, meaning to spiritually cover yourself. So again, he had told his sister about his dream, and that he started creating this. And what he done, once he started bending these willows symmetrically to that star structure, this is how they bend. See? These are how these willows are bent. Using this structure, eh? Making this connection to here, to here, to here. That's how the original, the first sweat lodge came in. So again, as he started bending these willows, and as he went in there, he was supposed to use the sound that his mother gave him. This is Nikawe, meaning mother. Itamaimon, to make the sound. Cry out through prayer. Nikawemo is what we say it, eh? To make the sound that my mother had given me. We simply understand this nigamo, and the translation to nigamo is sin. It's the old term is nikawemo, to make the sound. Because the very first sound, when you entered in this world through your mother, the very first sound that you made was wah! Sound, eh? Sound is the vibration to connect to the wind, that vibration. Eh? So again, as the little girl brought this into the Mitasan, he hung these 2 locks of hair right in the middle here, where this pick is at, eh? He put these 2 locks of hair. So he went in, and he told his sister specifically after they covered it, whatever you do not open this doorway. So Saga Attack started singing, and this was the tool that he used to make that connection to the spirit world. He started singing. Normally, a lot of times you'll hear this being shook 4 times. It's for these 4 Ishigawa. You'll hear this. Foremost, the creator. The second one is the sun. The third one is the wind. And here it's for the people. And they start singing. As Saga, they started chanting. This little girl that was sitting outside started hearing another voice manifest inside this lodge, and she listened closely. And she listened very closely. And she recognized that voice that started speaking there was of her father. And she was quite profound, and she continued to listen to her father speaking the Saga Attack. And again, as he continued to chant. No, Patawe Ogini, Ogini Owa, no, Patawe Ogini, Way Hawi Ayo, Hey Hawi, Way Hawi Ayo, Hey Hawi, Wayo, Ayo, 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 Hawi, Wayo, Ayo, 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 Hawi. This This little girl started hearing another voice that she recognized to be of her mother's. We talk about mito-san, creating the bending of willows, of mito-san. She started hearing this voice manifesting there. And she recognized this voice to be of her mother. And she was so excited that she hasn't touched her mother or hugged her mother in such a long, long time. So as this little girl, she wanted to hold her mother. Nigot wanted to hold her mother and just wanted to embrace her mother because she had not seen her mother in a long time. Then she opened the doorway to the ceremony. And Saga was astonished why she opened this doorway. She upset the ceremony. And how the story ends is Saga sat there and cried, Mato, Mato. And this is the reason why we call this now. It changed from Mito-san to Mato, Matot-san. The closest translation, and there's no relevancy when you use the language, the crying lodge. But, you know, Matoa Poi, Mamatawa Poi is what we call it. When you release pain, what happens when you release pain? When something hurts so bad, you release this pain and water comes out, and then the pain goes away. And that's how we deal with a lot of our pain, spiritual pain, physical pain, emotional pain. That is the best place for that healing. So this water, you're not actually sweating. So you're just sitting there, and all of a sudden all this water is coming out of you. So that's the wrong term to these things. We call it Madot-san. The closest translation to this in the English language is the purification lodge. Because when your water's 80% of your body mass is made up of water. Once your water becomes distorted and clouded, you're unable to function. You get depressed. You become lazy. You don't want to do anything. You don't give a heck about anything, eh? So once you clean these waters, you become healthy and vibrant, eh? So that's the reason why we use this lodge. The closest translation scientifically, I can openly discuss this about you. If I was to put one of you in this lodge, one good round, and I sat out there with a thermometer, and I stuck it into your mouth after you come out, that thermometer will read 102 or better, because you're rising your temperature. So what happens when you become ill and sick? Your body shuts down. You just lay in bed. You're just sweating, cold sweat, hot sweat. And your breathing becomes like this. All your energy now is focused to your heart, to pump your heart fast. So what your body's doing when it shuts down like that, when you run a hot temperature, your body's conserving all its energy to its vital organs to try and repair itself. That's what they call an immune system. It tries so hard to repair itself, eh? And sometimes now the colds, now H1N1, they become very hard and they're unable to do it. That's why they use medicines, such antibiotics to further that process. So when we go into this lodge, it's the same thing. What you're doing is you're perpetuating, meaning you're putting your body in a state to heal itself. If we were to take all the pipes, the ceremonies, medicine, that's what this thing will do for you. But our people further entice this process by taking the natural medicines to make this connection to the spirit world. The medicines, the prayers, and the songs, they further entice that process to heal. To heal. Because each and every one of us, we get distorted minds. Some of us want to give up. And we've seen a lot of our relatives give up. So that's where the value of this knowledge is, why we call it Madot-san. You've now heard the stories, and hopefully that you could see it once they start utilizing what's being developed today by Natalie here. You'll be able to now Google it, and the story will be on there. So to refresh that. So this is where the knowledge comes from. Again, I want to go back to this one here. This is the Big Dipper. Talks about these seven ways of life. They're not laws. It's a choice. It's a choice for our people. We honor this big bear, Maskwa. You're going to require, this one is the Dipper of the North, and you'll see it. And this is why we honor Maskwa, Mistay Maskwa. Maskwa in our language does not mean bear to us. It's a foreign translation. Maskwa means strength. Ga maskawa, maskawisi. You know, hence the word maskigi. You know, you hear that little parable, mas is a short form as maskwa. Maskigi. So the strength, it talks about the strength of the earth. His sole purpose, because that's where his life came from the grass. Maskusi, you hear? Maskusi. That's why when in the fall time, because his life was given by the grass, Maskusia, in the fall time, when the grass lays down, it becomes dormant. That is why he goes into hibernation. He has to lay down too, because he's so connected to the land here. So when we hear this word mas, and we hear this kiige is your homelands. Like niige, niige, kiige. We didn't consider these as our homes like what we consider today. Our homes were the land. So kamaskawakige, maskigi, hence the word maskigi, that your homelands are very powerful. So when we become sick and imbalanced, we now need to go back to the land. We eat off the land, duck, soup, goose, anything, eh? It brings us back to balance. It gives us that strength. So everything that we take off the land, we're very thankful, and we do it through ceremony. This is what we follow. Right now, this is where we're at in this winter time. When you look at the dipper, it'll be like at this point. In the springtime, the birds even know this, eh? When this bird is spilling this way, meaning that it's time for them to come north to bring those blessings. The ducks, the geese, all the summer beings. And besides the seed again, because you're spilling it, eh? The Creator. In the summertime, we know that the Creator is spilling upon us. That's why we do the ceremonies, the big lodges, such as the sun dance, the chicken dance, the horse dances, and whatnot. Here in the fall time, we know it's grasping life. So we follow this too. This is when we hunt for the four-legged animals. We follow this cycle, eh? And same time in the winter time, nothing's spilling upon us here. It's dormant like this. Nothing can stay in that. So this is where we give thanks in the winter time. This is why the reason why we do the round dances in the winter time. We have the stick games in the summer, in the winter time too, eh? All these things, to give thanks for what you have been given to you, eh? So that's the reasoning behind that, eh? And again, round dances are happening once these stars are out so that our relatives can come and dance with us, eh? It's about giving thanks, but these things nobody speaks of, eh? So, and of course, this is the only star, the North Star. This is the only star in the universe that stays in one spot. Everything else revolves around this, eh? And this is where the knowledge comes in, to sit still so that you are able to be taught spiritually, eh? So this is why we follow this cycle. Hi, thank you.